Hello and welcome to the Garian Tabletop. I am Garian Reaver and this is a Far Waste devlog. How about a new genus, the Moraith? Remember, this game is a work in progress. Put your feedback in the comments or join us on the Garian Reaver Discord, linked in the description. All the release rules are on the Far Waste Lab, also linked. Among the Thalborn genera that came from the Radiation's flash evolution, the Moraith are something of an anomaly. While the occasional moray settlement does exist, most individuals choose to live on the outskirts of other Thalborn settlements or in isolation entirely. Descended from moray eels, they are slim-bodied and very lithe creatures, purely carnivorous and prolific hunters. Some Moraith have shown great intelligence, devising ingenious methods of luring, tracking, and catching prey, but it is rarely seen as a particularly important quality in someone. Rather, speed and ferocity are seen as vastly superior, especially when stacked against other genera of more ponderous form. Commonly exhibiting a callous disregard for other creatures, Moraith are the primary suspects whenever a murder occurs in a settlement they frequent, but there is usually a striking lack of evidence. For all their faults, Moraith are not careless. Individual Moraith rely on natural weapons to hunt, favouring the feel of their own teeth sinking into prey, and only using firearms against the most ambitious targets. This habit somewhat diminishes when working in a group, which they're not inherently opposed to do, and they will happily wield whatever equipment keeps them on par with the others. A single Moraith is the threat of death. A group is a promise. As quick hunters, it makes sense that their stat boosts are a +2 and a +1 to different stats, one of which must be finesse. Their genus trait is currently a bit of a double-barrel one, but I might split this into two, for mutant purposes. I'll weigh it against the others for balance at some point. Like the moray eels that preceded them, Moraith typically hunt at night. To this end, they have impressive vision in the dark. You have night vision with a range of 10 meters or close range. You can also make an attack with your jaws using the following profile. You are always considered adept with this attack. I'm currently in the process of overhauling the melee weapons, but based on current listings, this is equal to a starting precise weapon, like a combat knife. The difference is it can't be disarmed and doesn't need a free hand. Of the two species of Moraith seen around the Far Waste, the Night Moraith is the less terrifying. Less being the operative word. Having a more rounded and smooth-looking form than their glass kin, a Night Moraith's resting face can often look goofy. When stood with its mouth open, it's not easy to see the teeth that await prey, the most dangerous of which lie on a set of pharyngeal jaws hidden in their throat. Their bite is still significant, however, and their minds are quick. The main advantage that the Night Moraith have is their skin itself. Able to secrete a toxic mucus from pores all over their bodies, other species find it to be painful and inhibiting on contact. In moments of need, they're even able to produce enough that it can ooze out through clothing and around armour, although this will deplete their reserves for some time. Night Moraith have crenotoxin as their species trait. They can secrete from their skin a toxic mucus that attacks the blood cells of victims, leaving them vulnerable to other threats. Once per turn, while making skin contact with another creature, you can choose to secrete the mucus. The other creature must pass a body res check versus might, or take 1d4 toxic damage and be unable to regain health by any method for 1 hour or until they take an antidote. You may also concentrate, secreting enough mucus for it to permeate clothes and ooze around armor. Doing so causes it to affect anyone making any contact with you regardless of any clothes or armor for 1 minute, but makes you unable to secrete any mucus until 24 hours have passed. Night Moraith are immune to this mucus. Now's a good time to talk about MBS checks. One of the earliest ideas I had for the Far Waste was the idea of these checks. MBS stands for Mind, Body and Soul. They protect characters against hostile effects, whether they're intentional or environmental. They used to function like saving throws, but I was never fully happy with that system. I recently overhauled the system completely, deepening the mechanics while keeping them in line with other parts of the game. We now have MBS scores. These are static numbers calculated based on stats. Hostile effects have to roll equal to or higher than these scores to affect the creature, just like how attacks have to roll equal to or higher than evasion and shields to hit. Due to the massive variety of things that roll against these scores, such rolls are collectively called Mind, Body and Soul checks. Mind scores use either com or int depending on how they're affecting the mind. Com is used to resist things that affect the function or freedom of one's mind, such as drugs or mind control. Int is used to resist things that influence thoughts, priorities, or perception, like fear, hallucinations, etc. Body scores use either res or might. Res is to resist things that affect the condition of one's body, like mutation and radiation. Might is to resist things that forcibly move one's body, such as pushes or pulls. Soul scores are different in that they're not linked to a stat. Currently, they're only used to resist death. For mind and body, your scores start at 10 plus the stat. This number increases as you level up. Soul scores are 13, that does not increase. Most abilities will state which stat you add to your mind or body scores to resist, but other times the GM will decide based on the nature of the effect. If both stats are equally viable, then use whichever stat is higher. For example, against being hypnotized, com is best as it represents your force of will, but if fighting the urge to target the closest threat, intelligence is better as it represents your clear, logical thinking. Here's an example of how mind and body checks are formatted. Pass a body res check versus int. This means a creature is using a hostile effect that uses their intelligence to strengthen it. The creature rolls a d20 and adds their int to get a total. This is compared to the target's body score using res as the stat. If the rolled total is equal to or higher, the body check is said to have failed as the target suffers the effect. Maybe that's too confusing as a system. Technically, it's a check against the body, so maybe the terminology needs tweaking. Let me know what you think. But remember the simple phrase, meets it, beats it. This is true for attack rolls and MBS checks. The rolled total doesn't need to exceed the evasion, shields, body score, whatever. It just needs to meet it. Meets it, beats it. There are also times when it's a skill, not a stat, rolling against the MB score. That's a bit more complex and I want to talk about skills next time, so we'll come back to them. I mentioned that MB scores improve as you level up. This is the core growth that I mentioned in the Chemist class devlog last time. Every 4 levels, starting at level 4, a player's mind and body scores increase by 1. As shown here, they go all the way up to 16, and remember that a stat is always added to that. I haven't talked about soul checks because they're a whole separate thing. I'm supposed to be talking about the Night Moraith, so soul checks are another thing for next time. Anyway, going back to the Crenotoxin, it's a body res check versus might, meaning the Moraith rolls a d20 and adds their might. I'm not certain might is a good fit here, maybe it should be res? It's the strength of one's natural toxin, what stat best represents that? The toxin does a bit of toxic damage, but the main thing it does is inhibit healing. Affected creatures cannot regain health for 1 hour. That's a big deal, affecting both combat healing and natural regen. It usually requires skin-to-skin contact, but a creature as flexible as a Moraith should be able to get creative. Silent, patient, motionless. Then suddenly a jolt of movement as jaws full of teeth like shards of glass clamp onto the unfortunate prey. Glass Moraith are descended from the fang-tooth moray eel, and were named as such for the appearance of their distinct and prominent teeth. Visions of aquatic horror now intelligent and roaming the land. The very sight of them raises alarms and draws attention. Despite appearances, glass Moraith are no more likely to be hostile than their night cousins. They were simply born to more obviously display their ability to maim and kill. For this reason, glass Moraith are incredibly rare sights in areas patrolled by the Vanguard militia, most preferring to stick to the safer areas such as the Far Waste themselves. They are skilled survivalists, rejected as they are by many centers of civilization. The glass Moraith species trait is glass bite. The teeth of the glass Moraith are notoriously similar to shards of broken glass, sharper, more jagged, and more penetrative than even those of other species of Moraith. You can make an attack with your jaws using the following profile. It is armor piercing. You are always considered adept with this attack. More straightforward, this replaces the Moraith bite that comes as part of Nocturnal Hunter. As I mentioned, I'm currently overhauling melee weapons, but the plan is to allow melee to ignore some armor. Most armor is designed to protect against guns, so it makes sense that melee weapons can sneak into the gaps. There will be stuff like armor-piercing melee weapons, like this bite, that can avoid it while also damaging it. Such things are very dangerous, even when the damage output is low like for this. Moraiths are an unusual genus, like most Thalborn genera I suppose, and I need to sit down and think more about their culture. They can be creepy or goofy, helpful or harmful, but they're always quick and dangerous. And that's it for the Moraith. Let me know your thoughts. Next up will be some important stuff like skills. Join us on the Gary and Reaver Discord and check out the Far Waste Lab, both linked in the description. Please share this around to your friends and gaming groups so we can continue to grow and improve. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe for more Far Waste devlogs or for board games, card games, miniatures, and TTRPGs like this. And I will catch you later.